This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I celebrate the 87th birthday of Elvis Presley with a big conversation with his cousin, Edie Hand, who gives me unique insights into his life, the humble background that shaped him, and her book, The Genuine Elvis. Edie, who grew up in a small town in Alabama, is an author, an actress, publisher, and a movie producer. In her life, she has had some huge setbacks, but with true grit she continues and has enjoyed huge success. These experiences have led her to founding the Edie Hand Foundation and an organisation called Women of True Grit to support women who have suffered trauma in their lives. She talks about her life, her career, and at the age of 72, she shares her perspectives on getting older. She says, "You can't get to beautiful if you have not been through hard." Let's hear from Edie. Today I've got the company of the lovely Edie Hand on the Win Happy podcast. A huge welcome, Edie.
Hello to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Tough first week, back in the new year, back to the grind, back in the office. Yeah, I'm glad tomorrow's Friday.
Well, you and me both. But sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, Fridays are all the time.
Yeah, this is absolutely true. So you've got a big story, and I'm just going to mention a few words and we can get into it then. You're an author, a movie producer, a speaker, an actress. You're a mother.
Yes, I am.
And you've got a relation that we all know only too well. What's this poor man's name?
Elvis Presley.
Yeah, Elvis Presley.
Few people know that name.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in a way, I'm not sure if this is an unfair thing or a fair thing. It's obviously the little bit of glue about you. Someone thinks, oh my God, she's a cousin of Elvis, and it's the obvious thing to talk about. But I think in truth, and I've looked at your bio, and I know we've been in touch through your daughter-in-law. I think in some respects, it's the least fascinating thing about your story.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, really, you've got a huge, huge story. And without spoiling everything for the listener, the question I ask everyone, and it's a very, very simple question: who the hell are you and where did you come from?
I like that. Well, I'll tell you, I am a country girl that learned how to maneuver in the city traffic. I grew up in a little place called Burnout, and it was so small that my three brothers and I used to ride our horses to the corner Schubert's Grocery and write plum on the sign, burnt plum out, because nothing was happening in Burnout. It was a very small country community where I learned the most about love and laughter, and just little things in life that I see full circle coming back to me in my seasoned years.
Were you farming folk? Were mom and dad running a farm, or how did that work?
My parents owned a country grocery store. We did have a small little farm, but it was mainly just for our family. Now, my mother's parents had a working farm of hundreds of acres in one area, thousands in another. So they were big time into cotton, corn, soybean, cattle, where they milked their cows for their milk. And these were all very talented. My mother's brothers were musicians, singers, songwriters. In the evenings, they'd make music on the front porch. You could hear it everywhere in that country holla. So it was quite picturesque in a big old white farmhouse with a porch all the way around it. It was a simpler way of life, but it was good. So I think that was very special for me, that I got to be surrounded by people that would reach back and pull you up if you needed it, which served me well.
A question I ask a lot of my guests, in particular someone who's grown up in the country, does it change you having that background?
That's a great question. I don't know that it changed me. It helped me to make transitions in my life better because I had a more solid base in my life. I guess that's the best way I can put it, that everything was new and exciting. If you came from humble and small surroundings, to go somewhere else was a different kind of adventure. And so I always knew, until I lost my family, I knew that I could go home. It was when I could not go home that I had another deep transition in my life.
Okay. The word I use a lot of the time for people from the country is that they seem to be very grounded. And maybe because you're close to the land or something, that it does change you, as opposed to someone who's living in a big city, you know.
I think that's a fair assessment of when you're surrounded by Mother Earth and animals. And we rode horses and we had pets, all kinds of pets. And my brothers were adventurous souls, And so all of that does make a difference. I think that we learn to share, and gathering was important. And a lot of times when you're in the city, by the time you've been nice all day, you're tired of being nice and you don't want to gather. It is a different way of life.
Even living in a house or in a home where the income was dependent on the shop, were you aware that it was an entrepreneurial family, and if you had a good week or a bad week, that the family fortunes were quite dependent on what came through the door and what went into the till?
I was a older young woman. I mean, I was aware, being the oldest, that my father was an entrepreneur spirit with several trucks he kept on the road that would either haul different things. He had 3 different guys that would run trucks. He was a mechanic in a local company not far from us, the TVA. They built dams and keeping a country store going, that we just all grew up working 3 jobs. And I used to laugh about it and say that I don't know how to do anything else, even at this season time of my life, than to work 3 jobs. We just always knew that whatever it took, we were taught to find solutions.
Were you close to your mom and your dad?
I was close to them, but my mother was sick a lot. She had severe migraines, and things in life were hard for her to, some people, and when I was growing up, they would call it bad nerves, or, just go into her room and want to be alone. So I became more outgoing and took her role more with the 3 boys. Now, my sister came along late in life when I was going off to college, but I was always a leader in my home as a young girl.
Tell me, when the young Edie Hand was in school and the teacher, for whatever reason, had lost your attention and your head goes somewhere else, where did your head go?
I was fascinated with New York. I was always fascinated. I knew I was to be on Broadway. I just knew that was where I would be. And I would write short stories, and I had a vivid imagination, as my English teacher would say. And I always thought that's where that I would be. I missed my calling to be an old Broadway hag.
So your journey into theater and all of that. So when did you get that opportunity?
I did in high school. I was a leader in my school. I was a cheerleader. I was involved in community work. I learned that from my mother and grandmother cared about people, and I was around them all the time doing things for other people. But when I went to college, it was Florence State University when I was there in North Alabama, not far, right on the Tennessee line. I was fascinated and a part of storytelling that I had never known on that level. Had the lead in many plays and played the movie star and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and played Queen Eleanor in The Lion in Winter, got to go to New York, be a part of things. The death of my oldest brother that was under me, my senior year in college, changed the course of my life. I got on a different horse. I got on a different horse, wasn't the one I planned, but it really knocked the wind out of my sails.
And you mentioned getting on a different horse. You and your brothers had a little tradition every year, didn't you?
We did. We would ride our horses at dawn on Christmas, and we would sing Christmas carols. And my horse was named Trigger. For back then, it was Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. And he named his horse, David's horse was named Spotted Cloud because he was big into the Lone Ranger and Tonto. And my baby brother at the time, Terry, named his horse Polly because he was in love with our Avon lady. And this is a rural little person that would come around and sell whatever you needed for creams to make you feel good or smell good. And he thought that was just really cool. So his horse was Polly. And my baby brother, Philip, I would throw him on the back with me most of the time because I had a quarter horse. But like I said, my sister didn't come along till later. But it was a wonderful way I got to grow old with those boys that I did not get to grow old in real life, but I got to grow old with them as children.
And tell me, your eldest brother, did he get sick or was it something sudden or what happened?
He was killed in an automobile accident suddenly. He was 19. He was a freshman. 10 years later, my baby brother died at 23 in a car wreck. And then 10 more years later, my middle brother was stricken with an aneurysm in the middle of the brain. And my mother, my sister, and I caregave for him for about 7 years. It died like an MS kind of thing. He could only blink at the end, but it really taught me a lot. And he had a lot of horses, and I used to ride them, and his sons did. It was a story that I wrote and was able to put together about 4 years ago called The Last Ride, and it was about lessons of love, and it's on my website now. But it was a very healing thing for me to do. I'd not grieved those boys in 40 years, and it allowed me to grieve the boys.
I was chatting to someone today, and it's a line I heard once, and it really stayed with me. And it's that we have two lives, and we only realize we have two lives when someone is gone. And your second life, you realize there's only one.
Yes.
And I think when grief comes knocking at our door, for most of us, that happens, when we're later on in life, and it could be your parent. And in my case, that's exactly what happened. But in your case, the death of a sibling, it's quite a different thing. I know around this time last year, my own wife, Deirdre, her brother passed away. And her mother and dad are gone, a number of years before that. And she says to me that it's quite a different thing when a sibling goes. But when your siblings go at a very young age, that must be crushing, Edie.
It was, especially since I had been part of their rearing, to raise them. And I was the one that sat in the football stands or the baseball bleachers, or I was the one who helped them with their homework, and I cooked for them. I did their laundry. So I had a different connection with those boys, and even in college. But here I am today. I'm quite emotional in my spirit, is that I miss them every day.
How did you deal with all of that?
At the time, I really learned to detach. I had to, because I was working my way through college. I had 3 jobs. Like I told you, I always had them. And there I was working on campus, writing, working at a local clothing store and at a radio station. They liked the sound of my voice. They felt it was soothing. I learned to use my talents from my instructors, and by detaching, I became a workaholic. And I could have done a lot of things worse, that's for sure. So it was probably the lesser of the evils, but it's hard to allow people to get too close to you when you have that many walls built up. Sometimes it's just hard to let people in the way you need to let them in.
Yeah, my own father passed away 5 years ago, actually at this time of the year. And I must say, and maybe it's a terrible thing to say, but I found work was so therapeutic. You lose yourself in it. Someone is looking for something, there's a deadline. You know what that world is like. So very, very quickly, you just have to get into a different gear, get into a different mindset. And other people then who face grief, need to take 6 months off, 12 months. I personally, I think that would be the worst thing of all time to do. I'm not sure what you think.
No, I never did that personally, but I also had a lot of faith, and my grandmother was my anchor in my faith. And I learned to pray and to believe in those prayers, and that one day again I would see them. That was what I was taught and what I believed. And I studied in the King James Version of the Bible. And it was a comfort to me. And I would see signs of something and think, oh, they're with me. I believe in the signs of things. And I would feel this in my very being, and I'd know which way to go. And it was when I did not keep that compass there that I made the bad mistakes in my life. And so by losing them, I think it helped me to be a better person, that I became more compassionate for my fellow man. Um, I, I've lost a husband. I've lost my siblings. I've lost my parents. I have one sister left living, Kim. And her two daughters bring me great joy, along with my sweet son and daughter-in-law. But her daughters one has two little girls that are 6 and 10. Another has a little boy that's 7, and they call me Edel. And Edel is their movie buddy. And they say that I bring them fun and make them feel pretty. So I'll take it. So I may never have grandchildren, and I have a beautiful daughter-in-law and a handsome son, but if I don't, I can tell you that these children have brought me tremendous, tremendous joy. And I think that we have to find joy in our life. My goal this year at this season time, was to be kinder to myself, do more things that I loved, not just liked. And being alone, that I didn't plan on at this season of life, to surround myself with beautiful things and beautiful places to go to. And that's one of the things in telling the stories through the Women of True Grit is I hear those beautiful stories that are heart moving, not heartwarming because they're hard. But you cannot get to beautiful if you have not been through hard. And so that has become very good for my soul.
Plotting your career from those early days from college, and I know the tragedies with your brother kind of parallel to all of that. How would you sum up your career if I asked you to give me the quick tour?
Well, as we'd say in our business, 60-second infomercial. I would say I took my talents, became an entrepreneur, and I wrote and produced radio and television commercials for clients all over the country. I began to lecture and become a storyteller through different medias. I saw how lonely people were, how much they needed hope, and that I could fill a void, or at least a piece of me could. If people listened and found pieces of themselves in your story, it could make their day a little better, or maybe even their life. Because I know the same happened to me. If there was a book I read, or someone I heard speak, or a radio show I listened to, whatever. Now we have podcasts. It just made a difference in my life to be able to write, produce, and put packages together of stories. If I didn't get to live what I wanted to live, I could visualize it and tell the story.
So stories have been at the center of everything you're doing, and the
Yes.
medium has changed. I think that's just the one thing that keeps changing outside of that, but the basics are identical, are they?
And look, we're in different parts of the world and we're sitting here chatting and different cultures of different situations. But the one thing we all share, I think, is we have a passion, we have the way we project what we're passionate about, and how to take all that and have the resilience, no matter what your age or season is in life or geographically where you are. You can be and do anything truly that you want to be. I know that people get dealt some pretty bad hands. I mean, I actually did a piece I heard on trafficking that it just wasn't something that I thought about, but just hard things. And I'm sure that people that live in those hard situations or in prison or different things, how can they have a chance? They can in their mind. They might not physically get to go where we go or have an opportunity to, whatever their religion is. Mine, I believe in Jesus and God, but whatever it is, if no one robs them of their mind, I feel like if they hear my voice, they know they can paint a picture and they can escape. So that gives me comfort.
You mentioned that we have different cultures, and tell me about Alabama. And it's Birmingham, Alabama, is where you are, isn't that right?
Yes. Well, I have a country home and I'm in the city a lot and probably will move to a different area in the next 5 years as I'm, as they say, getting on up there. But I will never stop being a part of what's around me because that's who I am. As long as I can give, I'll be giving. As long as I can receive some joy through that or inspired to help somebody else, I'm going to do it. Out the culture here, people are friendly, rolling hills, beautiful lakes. Um, I'm probably 5 hours from one of the most beautiful beaches in the country is in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And, you know, we can get on a plane and go anywhere we want to go. But what I love about Birmingham is that we have enough culture where we can. I did a story on this young lady that's legally blind and she's a tap dancer and she has her father helped to build one of the most beautiful Red Mountain theaters here in Birmingham that we have something like in Manhattan that's right downtown. I took my great nieces and great nephew there for Christmas to see a Christmas spectacular. I think Birmingham is a nice little secret, and we're not far from maybe an hour and a half from the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I have interviewed the head of NASA there. These are exceptional women. So I feel very blessed to be here that I'm sitting right in the middle. I can drive 3 hours and I'll be in Memphis, Tennessee. I can drive 3 hours another way and I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, where the music is hot and they are having a hot time. That's for sure in Nashville, Tennessee. And if I want to go to the beach, you know, I just know that it was a great place to raise my son. And what he has left is his wife and his mama. But every day we talk. That brings me great joy that sometimes we talk 2 or 3 times a day. But I am in his world, even though he is on the other side of the country. You know, all of this in my culture has allowed him and me, Link and me, to see the world through different eyes because we know how to be kind. Um, we know how to have the entrepreneur spirit and we have forgiving hearts. I feel very blessed to be where I am at this season time of my life.
You know, Edie, you're talking about your time of your life, and I think with time comes a lot of wisdom. Through your years and your years working in media and putting a microphone in front of someone, and I know you've interviewed a lot of politicians and stars and some very important people. And of course, we have that famous relative of yours, and we'll get to him in a while. When it comes to interviewing people in stars, what happens to people with a little bit of fame, a little bit of attention? You obviously get to meet a lot of them for, I don't know, the half an hour segment or the hour segment in the interviews. But obviously in your position as well, you get to know a lot more of them. What have you witnessed with people when the little bit of stardust arrives, and how they are as people?
Mm. Greg, that's a good question that a lot of individuals are very grateful to have the opportunity to use their power for leadership or to be able to help their families or people or a charity they love. But not everyone is that way. That is for sure. Um, I have watched a different air sometimes when people come into the room, but I try to disarm individuals to just that I am not intimidated with that. I grew up around some of the most iconic people in the world. And that's all they really want is if they're really there, they want to just be treated like you and I sitting here if we were having a cup of hot tea. But there are those that I have interviewed that need privilege. Sometimes they forget and they become too full of themselves. And that's one of the things I've tried to instill in my son is you can always disarm people with kindness, even if they're not. And I've seen people mellow after that. But when he becomes even more famous, as he will with this role he's taking on, and I think you'll remember the name Link, Linc Hand. He's going to be a big star one day. And he comes from that lineage, but he also comes from a strong mother that believes in kindness. And I tell him, never get too big to think that you're better than any other human being. Always be genuine to yourself and you'll be genuine to others. I'm not saying he'll be perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm saying the people that I have the privilege to be around, I let them know how much it is a privilege for me. And I hope that by the time they leave, they're glad they got to meet me.
Because I think a lot of the time, from my experience dealing with people,
Yes.
what changes is how people are towards you, and they don't treat you the same. And as a result, I think that the person that's has the stardust and is in the limelight, their radar for normal human behavior and interaction gets broken because very few people are being normal around them.
That's true. And it allows them to take on that air of I'm privileged.
Yeah, that they quickly lose their center, you know. If you're a regular person, and excuse my French, if you're being an asshole to someone,
Yes.
they'll tell you very quickly you're being an asshole. And whereas I think with stardom, things like that may not happen, or when your star fades a little bit and you don't get all the attention, and your radar has been fairly, your compass for dealing with people in an ordinary way is totally broken. It damages them. From your years interviewing people, are there some very special people you came across that at this point in time that you remember?
Yes, I mean, I can tell you, I actually got to know just with Barbara Walters passing, I got to be around Barbara and was there in the 70s and 80s. And when I was in New York a lot and worked with the American Women in Radio and Television and just sitting down and interviewing informally. And I think probably I was so privileged to get to interview so many people from the Today Show that I got to be a part of. Meredith Vieira, just a really sweet lady that helped me with my first Women of True Grit book. A woman that totally touched me was Brigadier General Wilma Vaught. And she was recognized this year at the age of 96 as one of the outstanding citizens of the United States and was given the Medal of Honor from President Biden. And I interviewed her over 20 years ago in Washington, D.C., and she told me why she let me interview her. And I said, so, okay, I never had anybody. I said, why? I thought you just wanted to tell the story about the Women's Memorial and how you'd raised $10 million and da da. No, I listen to Elvis Presley every Sunday morning. My driver drives me to church, and I love how great thou art. I thought this woman's got to be okay if she's his cousin. And I thought, wow, you never know what leads you. As I got to know her as a person, she hosted my first book launch there in Washington, D.C., with 40 women that came, and there were 2.4 million stories of veterans. It is a place to see, to go, because she could still kick your ass and take your name in her 80s and now 96. I wouldn't want to mess with her. I think getting to know the Danny Thomas family, interviewing Terry Thomas, Danny being a good Catholic and wanted to do something for children and founded St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for kids with cancer. And his middle daughter, Terry Thomas, and I, through younger years, became great friends. Of course, the hospital's based there in Memphis, Tennessee, and Elvis gave her dad a yacht to raise money. And she is my son Link's godmother now. And she lives in Beverly Hills, California. And she tells everybody she is Link's mother of the West. She helped me throw a big party for Link and Victoria when they were getting married there in West Hollywood, and because she couldn't get to the South at the time. And now her sister Marlo is the face, and Phil Donahue that interviewed people all over the world, her husband. But getting to know all these people, and her brother, Tony Thomas, the baby, wrote Golden Girls. He was one of the writers for all that this legendary television of Golden Girls. But they're a wonderful family that I've been privileged to get to know through this and my heritage. And I got to meet Katharine Hepburn when I was 19 years old. And as I've told you, here I am in my early 70s. But when I was 19 and got to go to Broadway to see her in The Lion in Winter, it was fabulous. So excited, that my drama coach took me backstage to meet her and interview her, not on the record, but she let me because I was a college student.
That was a nice reflection on her, wasn't it?
Yes. Think about it. I mean, she didn't have to do that.
Yeah, of course she didn't.
For some reason, through my drama coach, she knew her through a friend, and she knew I was portraying the role. And she said, I want to see what the critics say about you when you finish your role. And I remember my drama coach sent her that it said on the headlines that I out Hepburn. And I remember I got flowers, and she said, bravo, And so little things meant a lot. I have interviewed, even in learning about Leanne Toohey, that's in this book of the Women of True Grit, it'll be out in March. She was the story about her and her husband in Blindside. She's in Memphis, Tennessee. But to hear what she has done with their great success and fame, and her only daughter married the owner of FedEx's youngest son, so they are a family of great influence. But what she does every Friday is put out about foster kids and helps to get these kids that are mainly, different nationalities that need help that somebody might not take another look. She gets them homes. She finds them families. And that to me is what life is. So a lot of people that I've met that have the influence have used it. Celebrities, politicians, leaders use this to make a difference. And if you make a difference in one person's life and you've changed it, then you've done something great. But if you do this every week over and over, I mean, that's pretty powerful. So that's the kind of people I have been privileged to be around, men and women. I'll tell you, there was a guy that made a difference for me when I was a young girl out of college and starting in the book business, that his parents had put me down in their little black book of, I used to go in college and sit there, do my homework in the little bookstore. She said, well, if you ever write a book one day, you need to come see my boys. Oh, well, okay, sure. I thought, okay. And she got my full name always, and I would go there. She always gave me an extra hot cocoa. But I'll never forget, I actually went to see one of her sons, and he made the difference for me. I got my books distributed. He helped me in New York. He helped me get my books in Walmart. He did just what his mom said he would do. Now, that was fascinating to me. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of people that I have interviewed directly or indirectly through situations. So why would I not want to pay life forward? I have a little intern. She's interracial that I have worked with in the last year that received a scholarship. George Lindsay and I. George was Goober in the Mayberry, and we were great friends. We kind of dated some, but I mean, we were more friends than that. But he was a lot of fun, a lot older than me. But we started a film festival. It was in his name. He was certainly more famous than me, but it was in his name. We both graduated from the same college. And through a mutual friend of ours, I asked for the money to help these kids. So we have put, I know over 50 kids through college in the last 25 years, which I'm very proud of from our little alma mater. And we still has the George Lindsay Film Festival bears his name in Florence, Alabama. So those are things, even though I got on a different horse and went a different way, and have spent my time just working and doing things in different communities, I see as I reflect now by going back to the college or going out into the community, just driving around, I see the fruits of my labor, and it makes my heart smile.
That cousin of yours.
Yes.
I know you weren't close cousins hanging around together every Sunday after Mass or anything like that, but do you understand where he came from and how that shaped him?
Yes.
And a bit like what we were talking about, the stardust. And I nearly need to ask you a question, which is, did he have any chance at all of having a life? So I know there's a lot in what I've just said to you, so maybe I'll throw that ball to you.
Wow. I was privileged to know him, not know him like his mafia group, as they call themselves, hanging around him all the time. But our grandmothers were tight, and they dipped snuff, and I used to get them black gum toothbrushes, and they would tell ghost stories. And I remember Elvis coming downstairs a couple of times and was there, and sitting there with Dodger and my grandmother Alice and listen to their stories. That's the way his grandmother and my grandmother, being family, grew up, telling stories, simpler things. But we didn't get to do that very often. But I think that's a loaded question when you say, I mean, I got to see him pay life forward. I mean, I was there when I actually saw him give out so many things. I mean, I have some beautiful jewelry, but I mean, just like over the top, couldn't imagine people getting so many cars and so many of this or that, and that, that he would gift people with. And I think that came from him being so poor. And they considered me to have grown up with money because we had a house and 40 acres, a nice brick home, and as we call it in the country, because there wasn't no other brick homes in the country there. And, we had 2 cars and we had 3 bathrooms. I mean, most of them only had 1. I say all that to say, when you grow up in a 2-room shack and, there is outdoor plumbing until there is indoor, and you don't have much, and you don't have a lot to eat, but love and kindness passed it all. And that's what his mother gave him, was a lot of love, even though it was all complicated. People have heard the stories everywhere, but I saw a very giving, loving man. And my grandmother would say to him, "Oh, Elvis, you are just too pretty to be a boy." Those old country sayings that I treasure. And then my other aunt that lived behind Graceland in a trailer. There was like a trailer park in the back when I was going there, and there was a Church of Christ church over here on the left, where now they have Graceland's headquarters, that Jack Soden runs Graceland, that his office is there with a few of the other family members. But I remember driving behind that because Uncle Vester was out front then at the gate, but coming around that Church of Christ church, I just drive in, pull up at the trailer, get out, go in, and walk through the back little gate, and they have EP everywhere. And then they had a little office in the back that his cousin, double first cousin Patsy, and I don't remember them all, but some of them that are still living that are around there, I see them now and then. Like I've been invited to drive up this weekend. It's Elvis's birthday. He would have been 87 years old Sunday on January the 8th. So there's a lady there that used to work with Elvis through RCA Records, and I've known her, I guess, 50 something years, long time. So I go, we'll have a cup of hot tea or something stronger and celebrate memories of those we loved that are gone. And she's in her 80s now. And Lisa Marie will be there to cut the cake. Seeing something as grand as what this man did to touch the world really just kind of blew my mind, because girls would try to hide in the trunk of the car if they thought I was going to Graceland. I said, y'all are going to die in the trunk of my car. But I didn't get to do the grandiose things that a lot of them did. I was friends with Rick Stanley, who was one of Elvis's stepbrothers that passed away a few years ago. Those three boys grew up as his brothers. They were closer to my age. But Elvis was kind and good to them and loved those boys. Me being so much younger, I was like 15 years younger. So, I was in high school, just starting college. And then when he passed away in 77, it was devastating. I got the call from my aunt and there at Graceland. And I think that he was a man that I was privileged to meet, be around, but more importantly, to see that he would pull you in and hug you. He loved you as family. He was a genuine guy, and he was a big giver. I don't know all of the, as they say, the hell raising part and doing all of that. That wasn't something I was privy to or wanted to be. I really didn't, that was not my air, and I didn't say anything was wrong with it. I'm just saying it wasn't my thing. And the women really protected me from all of that. But wow, when I wrote this book, The Genuine Elvis, and you can get that online, but I wrote it with Ronnie McDowell, and Ronnie was chosen by Priscilla to be the voice of Elvis. He has a beautiful voice, and Ronnie and I are still great. We've been friends 30 years. We do movies together every once in a while, and I go see his shows. And, he just said, wow, I just love touching the history, Edie. So he shows up a lot. But I think when he showed this reflection here, if you looked at the cover of The Genuine Elvis, of the young Elvis and the Elvis in the mirror, was what you said, from those country roots of poverty to even my country roots of caring and childhood things that I was privileged to do, did mold me to be a good person. It did mold Elvis Presley to have the passion to be uniquely himself. He didn't give a rat's ass what nobody else really thought of that. He wanted to do his music his way, and he did. But he did care about what people thought, and he did love his family, and he loved his friends. He proved that, that he did. And when you come from very humble beginnings, or you come from modest beginnings, if you really get your head right, if he had lived longer, maybe it'd been a whole lot different. But there are a lot of girls with a lot of rings, and there's a lot of guys with a lot of cars. But mostly importantly, that I learned from all of this in my life, and now that my son will walk in those veins, he's not an Elvis Presley, but he's going to have his own lane. Is that I hope that he will have that same kindness about him that he'll reach back and help somebody else along their way. And remember that where he came from and the people that loved him wanted only the best. And I think that when you are telling stories, it's not always easy to tell the hard parts, but it is the hard parts that bring out, like I told you, to the way it's bring out the beautiful side. You can't get from somewhere hard to somewhere good easy. I mean, some people have a more storybook kind of life. There are people that I've interviewed people that said, I've had an idyllic life. I did not. And I don't know a lot of people that did. But what's important is that you take your gifts, and each season, I think that we see that you got to have the grit, the resilience to push through and find what your real purpose in life is. And if you're lucky enough to do that, it's a life well lived. And Elvis Presley lived a full life in a short time.
You've written over 20 books, Edie. Putting pen to paper, when did you do that first? And have books been a form of therapy for you?
Well, Greg, first was about storytelling and food. I did cookbooks with stories, and I did a book called A Country Music Christmas with the late, great Buddy Killen, who actually published Elvis's Heartbreak Hotel that made him his first millions, and discovered a lot of stars like Dolly Parton and on from Nashville, Tennessee, but he was from Florence, Alabama. I think that from the first time in telling stories, I knew that it was poignant for me. It was healing to tell stories at different times. And this is my last Women of True Grit book. I think I'll be telling stories till I go to glory. But I did this as part of my legacy to show the diversity of women in ages, nationalities, different beliefs. But it's more, I knew majority of these people well. You know, some I did not. Some told the stories to me the way they wanted them, but I really tried to give each woman her voice, her way. Some I did totally just like what we're doing now. Some people wanted me to do it their way, and I did, but edited it some. But when you do these kind of stories, as I see, and putting pen to paper, I consider that something humbling because someone trusts you to tell their story. And I encourage people that are wanting to tell a story. I did everything others. I put it in audio, and I listened to the stories back. And, you know, in my day, we did legal pads, you know, all the time. We didn't have the kind of computers you have today. And of course, I have learned to use the computers, obviously. But to me, there's something very healing if you hear it through a sermon or anything. If you journal where you started and where you've gotten to, you just don't know where you're going to end up. And you never know that a piece of your story, like I said earlier, can make a difference or give somebody hope that they need to keep going. Because I know what it's like to be when I didn't think I wanted to go on, you know, through health issues or different things. But look at what I would have lost had I not stayed the course.
So the listener has heard you a few times, Edie, talking about the Women of True Grit. I think that that's an initiative that started in 2021.
Yes.
And it's continued since. So I get the essence of it. And you want to collect all of these stories with women who've been through some trauma or some very pressurized times. And I think as well as that, we need to place it in the environment of 2021, post-COVID, a very divisive America. We hear all of the stories here about the lack of gun control and everything. Could you maybe tell me the story of the environment in America now and merge that with Women of True Grit and those two things coming together?
Yes. In America, it is. I don't think I have, in my lifetime, heard so much and seen so much of violence. There's just not as much of value of life as it was when I was much younger. And I think that COVID certainly did play a part in depression for people. And I think mental illness has had more broad awareness in the United States. And I mean, even at my age, I think I have to watch differently when I leave the grocery store or when I make sure I'm in my home and put my security system on. But we all know that if somebody wants to get to you, they'll get to you. And that's unnerving. But yet in America, we have great faith. Um, no matter what your belief is, I think that's the one thing we are strong in is our faith. That we believe in the song that Victoria co-wrote, my daughter-in-law, about better tomorrows. There are ugly people, and there are people with evil wings, and there are people that will hurt you, but there are people that will love you, and there are people that will help you. And so I think that our America is strong. I'm proud for our flag to wave, and that being around military individuals, and I see it with women and men, young boys, young girls, the strength that I found through telling some of the military stories and our space and rocket centers of the women, it takes a lot of grit to get up and go face something that you may not come out of. The women I have been privileged to know, like I said earlier, like Brigadier General Wilmavant, one of the first, they will kick your ass and take your name. These are strong women, and I would want to be with them in a battle. And one of my lines is that I wrote was because I used the metaphor of the pearl, that it takes a speck of grit inside of an oyster shell through irritations to form a beautiful pearl. But we as individuals go through irritations in life that help us to find our purpose filled life if we allow it and we don't give up. So everyone that I surround myself with personally, I don't put up with, oh, I can't get this done or I can't. If you're my friend, you are a gritzy woman and you will get it done. You will find a solution and you'll get it done. There are days now, I tell you, just like anybody else, it's not as great as others. But our resolve is solid. And I think you would find that in a lot of women in America, is that we're a tough group and we want unity. We want to get along with other countries, with other people. And the very core of who we are is strong.
Yeah. So you mentioned the core. So the core of that idea for you, the women of true grit, is that about equipping people with resilience and honoring grit and trying to be a little bit tougher in a good way, not in a negative way, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. It is, in essence, it is helping someone to enhance the tools they have in life. Because sometimes you might not have the privilege to have someone to sit down and tell you how to apply yourself to achieve your goals, or do you even know what your goal is? It's where you could have the opportunity with these women to hear a story that could guide you to, perhaps you were an attorney and you wanted to be a nutritionist. How do you take an area maybe your family wanted you to be in, and how can you take another roadmap to get you to your passion? How did they do it? What if you didn't have the money? How could you find the money? These women give roadmaps, and they're not always easy to get to that final destination because you have to learn how to navigate. You got to have enough grit to push through your fears to navigate. So that's what we are arming you with tools in this book. We are giving you hope in hopeless situations, from being trafficked to finding help emotionally, psychologically, financially. And we're encouraging you to find who you really are. So all of these women have walked different walks. And even myself in my own story, I've never really just told my own story. And I do tell my story in this. And being a survivor is an overcomer, is a, like I said, put your pearls on and get your sword up because you're a warrior in life. If you can't fight and believe in yourself, how can you go out and do it for somebody else? So I hope that this will give people that kind of warrior attitude, yet feminine and soft with your pearls on, and go be who you were meant to be. Don't be afraid.
And I know part of your movement as well is that you've got your pearl coaches,
Yeah.
which is other warrior princesses who are armed and ready to help steer people with more grit.
You know, a friend of mine in Canada, her name is Carolyn Hart, and she's a CEO of a big group called Inspire Hub, and she built me this grit hub. If your listeners like, it's gritihub.org. And it was where women can come and gather. Don't cost you anything. And it's not selling you anything. It's just sharing what other people are doing and how can we help each other. And we're revamping to see what can we do this year to make that better, or to have a channel where people can go privately and ask questions. I have a friend that's in the book that's a clinical psychologist that teaches at Columbia University in Manhattan. And she deals with all kinds of questions, obviously, of life. And we have people that are willing to give of their time because they feel this is part of what this sisterhood is about. And that's what we have formed through it. And through my ediehand.com site, I link to these vignettes. If people want to see them, hear them, it's all free. And the documentaries, I'm very honored to do it. We do have here at the station, just to have someone like a Coca-Cola, our power companies, our local people that support helping community. I think if anything, like in your community in Ireland to our communities in America, if we can't help each other and really listen, I think if there's anything to be better listeners. That's mine in 2023. Taking care of myself physically, mentally. We have to eat better. We have to exercise. We have to take care of ourselves. And we as workaholics don't do a good job normally of that, but we have to try. And I am trying. I actually started a whole new health thing, I'm probably going to be a cute 73 is what I think.
Yeah, well, in our conversation today, I was going to ask you about if you had New Year's resolutions for some of the listeners, and I think you gave me a huge one there, which is look after yourself, then you can do a better job looking after everyone else. 72, and I wasn't going to be the person to ask this beautiful woman what her age was. Does your perspective shift with time? Of course it does, I'm sure.
Well, that's sweet of you to say. And I do. I'm very proud that I have good genes and good creams. I tell them that very important in my life. That I learned that from my mother. My perspective, yes. For the first time, I hadn't thought about me being in my early 70s. I really had. We celebrated my 70th birthday. My niece took me on this great trip with my sister to Gatlinburg, and we did fun things with the kids. I had 7 birthday parties, one in California, New York. I just like, what is it? They think I'm going to die? And I had never really had a birthday party, so I was excited. But the shift hit me this holiday. I thought, wow, my great little niece calls me Edel, the old lady that can hang. And I said, I am getting to be an older lady in my age, but I am not in my spirit. The shift lets me realize that I need to do just what I told you. I'm going to take better care of me because I want to be around longer. And I can be around longer and be effective and helpful if I'm sharp, I'm in shape, and I'm going to do it.
Are you still the same girl who was riding on a horse on Christmas morning?
No, but I have the same zest for life.
Yeah, good. You're on the Win Happy podcast, Edie. What's happiness to you?
What's happiness to me? Happiness is finding peace, genuine peace. And I can say for the first time in a long time, I have it.
And it is the Win Happy podcast. And what I say to people is that we might love playing football, but if there were no goalposts, it might get very boring after a while. So in your life now, do you have some goalposts? Are there some goals that will help you to win happy?
Woo. Yes, I'm looking forward. I've been a lot of places, but I have never been to Hawaii. I'm so excited to go to Hawaii and see my son perform. And who knows? I might just find some new friends to do some new fun things with that think in the same veins I do.
Okay. Now, I've got one big whopper of a question for you. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready. I'm sitting on the edge of my chair.
It's huge. It's a huge question. What was your best day ever?
Wow. No one's ever asked me that. I think my best day ever was the day my son was born, and his father and I were older in life to have him, and just that a love that I had never known in my whole life, that I felt for him, with his father, and all that were living at that time around us. I mean, that personally was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I think professionally, winning Edie awards and awards for my work that I had written and worked hard for, and being selected in my state as a top woman in my field gave me a sense of accomplishment in my space.
What I'd like to do to finish the podcast, if that's okay.
Okay.
I know you've got a very, very talented daughter-in-law.
I do.
So what we might do, and the listeners can hear this, is you might choose a piece of music of hers that we can close off on. And what you might do is tell me what the piece of music is and why you chose it.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm going to choose A Better Tomorrow. And that's what you heard and drew you to her, that brought you to me, is because I use it at the beginning of every piece. If someone went to my website, they would hear it with the pearls flowing, is because it was written about great loss, great joy, and just the essence of the hope of a better tomorrow. And it was written for what I wanted to do with my brothers I had lost. And for anyone that ever has loved and lost, whether it's in relationships, death, betrayal, or money, this song gives you that feeling there can be a better tomorrow. That's why I want it.
I think you believe that, don't you?
I believe it.
Edie, thank you so much. You've been a lovely guest. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
There'd be no sadness to cry. There'd be no selfish to lie. There'd be no reason for crime. There'd be no empty, no why. I see it when I close my eyes. Peace diamond rings. I see it when I close my eyes. Peace on earth and peace of mind. Let it go. We have to restore this planet's soul. Teach it something more than what we know. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. I can see a better tomorrow. I can see a better tomorrow. We share this place, we all belong. Light the way till dark is gone. Walking away still means you're strong. Rise above, hope isn't gone. Let it go. We have to restore this planet's soul. Teach it something more than what we know. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. I can see a better tomorrow. I can see a better tomorrow. Yeah. I can see a better tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.